when you walked in, so when we set this whole thing up of you coming on, we were obviously very excited. Will's a big Magic fan. I don't know if Magic is a disrespectful
It's kind of
term.
like Magic. So it's like a version. It's a subset of Magic.
Got you.
It's not like supernatural. I don't pretend to be psychic or have like, superhero powers.
Yeah.
This is a learnable skill, but the same way that I'm never playing linebacker, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not built for it. Certain people aren't built to be good at this. They can learn a trick or two, but they're never going to advance beyond a certain ceiling. I have a knack for this that I've kind of been working on for like 25 years.
When did you discover that this was a possibility? Like for me, I never even knew you could become a mentalist. I didn't know. I thought that was like some weird Houdini stuff. Like you go and you see these shows and people are incredible. It's like, oh, they must have just been born with that.
Right.
When were you like, I have this ability to learn the skill?
So I started with magic. So when you think of magic tricks, you think sleight of hand, right? Like card tricks. How do you do those moves? And there's a trick. When some dude cuts a woman in half in a box, that's not really her getting cut in half, right? It's like an illusion. So the same thing applies. I started doing this when I was a teenager, learning how to kind of manipulate people's minds. And with magic, you're doing sleight of hand. I'm tricking your eyes, right? My hands move in such a way that I'm deceiving your eyes. What mentalism is I start to just skip the props. I am able to just think of how you think and not need the cards or the props. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. But how do you, sorry.
How did I learn it?
I'm kind of, no, it's not. If you're using cards, you're now in control of the entire situation. But if you're meeting me for the first time, which we have met for the first time.
Just now. Like
how do you know the way I think?
Well, I could have looked you up. I could, once I meet you. Also, it's a chicken or egg question, which is, you think, how do I think? But I think, how do I guide you to go where I want you to go?
True manipulation.
If you could quantify into a few skills of what it would take to be in a position that you're in, like what would those skills be? Like when you're a teenager, when you're going through Wall Street, you mentioned negotiation. That's a skill. Like body language. Like what skills would you quantify in your line of work?
One of my great skills was not being able to pick up any girls. So at age 14, this became a very handy skill. I was like, what can I use to accentuate my 4-foot shrimp frame? And I'm like, I'm not a good singer, but girls love magic tricks. So that was one good thing. I also like just getting attention and learning how there's you had a comedian here yesterday. We were talking about Sam Rill. Amazing. I don't want to timestamp this, but like great comedians, man, that feeling with the audience where you get instant responses, right? Like a movie star, you make a movie 2 years later, you see the movie in a theater. With what I do, I'm getting that feedback from the audience every second. Like I came right from a corporate event. I would not have normally dressed in suit and tie. And in the corporate event, I never know what's going to happen. I'm getting a feel from the audience. It's very exciting because you don't know what's going to happen every time. I don't just phone it in. I try kind of do things that I'm not sure if they'll work.
He seems like he'd be very good at the game Werewolf.
Yeah.
Familiar?
No.
Have you played a game called Mafia?
Oh, a Mafia.
It's like a group saying like a game night situation where people are dished out cards, and the idea is to identify who the bad guys are with a group of good guys and try to kill off those people.
People are trying to lie and do all this stuff. It's a big manipulation.
Yeah,
game.
I wouldn't be fun with that. It would be awful for everybody
We should
else.
get a game in now.
We
should have to get a game.
I might have a deck of cards. I might have a card set in my backpack.
We've been looking for a deck of cards for an hour now.
Card set, the werewolf game.
Yeah. We'll have to hit it after,
check
but
that
that
out.
should be so much fun for all of us to play one game of werewolf.
Let's go.
So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Michigan.
You grew up in Michigan. You went to the University of Michigan.
I went to Farmington Hills, so North Farmington High School.
Gotcha.
And then went from there in state to Ann Arbor.
Was there ever a different choice?
I didn't get into 2 other schools.
Okay,
One
that's not what I
waitlisted
wanted
me.
to hear.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear that
But
was
no,
the only choice.
It should have been my only choice, but I think even if I had gotten in, I wouldn't have gone to those schools.
And you did engineering?
I did electrical engineering.
Electrical engineering, and from there you went to Wall Street.
Merrill Lynch.
So what was the transition there for you in college, going to engineering? I'm sure there's a passion behind that, and then ending up on Wall Street at Merrill Lynch.
Go blue. I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, so I fell into I wouldn't say fell into a path, but I was very good at math. So I've always been really good at math since I was a kid, kind of like almost a math genius. And so math came easily. It's not that I loved math, I was just really good at it. So it's kind of a lucky blessing. So I could do math very easily. So when I started doing computer engineering, I hated it, just not for me. And at that point, my sophomore year, I'm like, what can I switch into without losing all my credits?
Yeah.
So again, not the sexiest thing, but I'm like, I can do electrical engineering. And I liked it. And it was kind of interesting. And it seemed like it'd be a good potential for the future for getting a job, which it was, but it was not my passion. This was not like my trajectory. And if you ask my wife right now, she'll be like, he can't even change a light bulb.
Really?
Yeah.
Getting into mentalism, what was like the first experience that you had, like in college or Wall Street or whatever? Be like, hey, I'm going to start to carve out a lane.
So I was doing this. This was my side hustle because I graduated high school when I was 16. My folks had gotten divorced. They moved back to Israel. So I was kind of on the outs with my dad and stuff. So it was like a pretty messy situation, but I had to pay for all of my schooling myself. So I had to, when you ask me like why, it was like necessity is the mother of all invention. I was doing magic shows to pay my tuition and then another business, but I was like, my side hustle became my real hustle, where at Michigan, I was performing. There was a place called BD's Mongolian Barbecue. Yeah, do you remember that one? Street. Yep. And so it's gone now, RIP, but I used to perform there every Friday for all the time I was at college. Like a lot of people who are my years would have seen me. And then I'm doing all different events. I'm doing birthday parties. I'm trying to pay tuition. Mm-hmm. So I was doing this the whole time, always hustling.
You're working 24/7.
I was working somewhat. I had like a side business in the summer. Me and a buddy installed and removed boat docks. Wolverine Spartan Boat Dock Company. He went to Michigan State, so we cornered the market.
Yeah.
Everybody we knocked on their door. They're like, "Who's the Wolverine? Who's the Spartan?" They're like, "I'm not doing business with him." And he's like, "Yeah, screw this guy." So we had a very fun dynamic there. But I was always doing this, but not with the trajectory of, oh, this will be my profession, more because I had to. And then later, I don't want to call it later in life, but in my 20s when I quit my job, I decided to go after it and see if I could do this full time.
What was your first breakthrough moment?
It's hard to say. I mean, my big breakthrough was I was on a show called America's Got Talent. I got third place on there, and that just like juiced up my whole career, that rocket fuel. And then since then, there's been some big things since, I kept it going.
Who are the other two sons of bitches that took you down?
I know, dead to me. No, they were great. Honestly, that show, I say this fully, and I'm a competitive SOB. Like I like to win in general. I don't mind that I not win that show. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if winning that show helps your career more than if it's all how you use it, right? Like you both play football. Look what you're doing now. Certain things equip you for the future in a different way. If you win that show, the contract is much more like it kind of owns you for a few years. It's a different thing than if you just use the show and use it as a launch pad.
What do you mean by owns you for a few years?
You have to contractual obligations.
Okay.
Right? So like you got to do stuff for the show. I'm not saying anything bad, but if you win, you have a lot more responsibilities going forward. That if you're a singer might be great. If you're like I'm a variety act. So I have a very different business model than somebody who goes and sells out theaters.
Okay. It almost feels like you could have a really good performance on Shark Tank and leave with nothing, but then your phone's blowing up for other opportunities.
Totally. Yeah. Or some people don't get a deal on Shark Tank and then they're $1 billion company.
Yeah.
I mean, that's happened a few times.
Yeah. No doubt. So you go from Michigan, you go to Wall Street.
Yep.
While you're at Wall Street, obviously this is helping you out quite a bit. When did you go Wall Street to America's Got Talent? What
10 years later.
10 years later?
10 years to be an overnight success.
You stopped doing Wall Street, and then 10 years after that.
Yeah.
Really? And what'd you do in the meantime?
Just made money. Just like getting in those reps, like doing bar and bat mitzvahs, birthday parties, bridal showers. I was like Mr. Bridal Shower for like 6 years. Every Sunday afternoon, I'm hitting bridal showers.
14-year-old you is fired up. Finally got it in with the ladies.
That's not bad. I had just a couple years of being single between college sweetheart and current wife. And my only wife. That sounded weird. Yes.
That was going to be the next question.
Honey? No. Wife, 4 kids, very happy. Very busy home life. But I guess that was the only time where actually, between all of those times, I was just the ultimate wingman. Mm-hmm. My friends would just use me. It wasn't even like a pretend. They'd be like, quick, do some stuff to her and then leave. I'm like, what? So I'd be the guy because I could just go up to any group and just, I know what you're thinking. I know your ATM PIN code, and now meet my friends. And they're like, yes.
And then you just ninja smoke and you're out.
Just like, boom, you nailed it.
Yeah. You bring up your one of 4 wives. Like in these conversations, when you get into argument with your one of 1 wife.
Yes.
When you get into argument, like that's got to be an unfair battle.
It's an unfair battle because she's a woman and she's smarter and wiser in every regard. So I'm always wrong no matter what.
Oh, so there's still the same plane.
Toe the line, baby. He's quick, bro.
Very quick.
Rules apply.
Is there ever like manipulation within the house? And I don't say manipulation in a bad way.
I literally was just telling her yesterday this joke and this trick that I thought was so great. And she's like, yeah, just tell your magician buddies. Like she is not the good sounding board. No offense to her. She's amazing at everything else, but she is so over mentalism and magic.
Yeah, she's done
been around for 15 years. She's like, I'm over it.
What was the experience like on Wall Street? You hear the stories, not ever being on Wall Street, cutthroat, the types of people you meet.
You watched the movie Wolf of Wall Street once, and you think that's how it is for everybody. Like you did. To me, you did a lot of cocaine and owned a yacht
and jerked off a lot.
Everything.
Jerked off all the time. Matthew McConaughey was
there were Quaaludes, even though it was in the 2000s. They were banned. But no, that's a topical joke. You need to know your history on that.
No question.
But I didn't mind my job. So I wasn't in like a situation of every day I'm punching the clock and miserable. I just simply knew, and I think a lot of people that might listen to this are in that position of, this isn't my future. Like, do you know what I mean? This is a stepping stone where I wasn't going to climb the corporate ladder. And it took time for me to end up believing in myself that I could quit. Because, you know, you're getting a paycheck. Things are good. It's very hard to tiptoe out of it. A lot of people, once you get into a lane, you just get that structure and it's very easy to stay in it. And even if it's miserable, if you can kind of coast. So for me, it was mostly, it took some bravery and some realizations and a few moments that were like kind of whoa, aha moments to decide I'm going to quit my job and go for it.
What gig did you have at Wall Street?
So I wasn't really, I supported the investment bankers. Okay. So I worked in tech because I was an engineer, but I would create like the apps. Honestly, what I was a pain in the ass for the people who I worked with, where internally after 9/11, they made data centers that were like mirror images so that they could never have another 9/11 and destroy like the infrastructure of our country. So they would have to have these things called contingency recovery centers. A little bit boring. So when some really smart 45-year-old engineer would be like, I need all of these servers and to spend $10 million, me, some 22-year-old idiot twerp, is like, we can give you $3 million. Everyone in my company hated me who I worked with. I was like a punching bag of budget bureaucracy. Guy. So when we would then go out to happy hours, they'd be like, oh my God, that's the kid who I hate on the phone. And I do magic tricks. And they're like, you're not so bad, bro. Yeah. And so it was a great way to win people over and create kind of camaraderie amongst people that otherwise would not have liked me. Because I was like a project manager. And that built up where I started doing shows within the company, higher and higher level shows where they'd hire me, to the point where at one point the CFO of the company, who's like my boss's boss is 20 leagues up, had me doing stuff for him. And I did a magic trick where I turned $1 into a $100 bill. And he goes, oh, it's like, dude, we got to get you working here. And I'm like, I do work here. And he's like, he thought I was joking. I'm like, no, seriously, I work at 95 Green Street. He's like, yeah. And this guy looked at me and it's a flippant remark. And he goes, what are you doing working here? That for him was like, he doesn't even remember it. And for me, it changed my life. Because about a month later, I quit. I'm like, what am I doing working here?